And what I find are two types of strategies. So the first I call ring fencing, and the second I call venue shopping. So ring fencing, the kind of basic story here is that some of your viewers and listeners may remember this history if they're old enough, that in the mid 90s and coming out in the kind of negotiation of the transition to democracy, there was a relatively temporary compromise in Joburg that said there would be sub-municipalities that would have specific powers within the broader unified Joburg municipality. So one of the key questions coming out of apartheid was, how are you going to unify all of these disparate local governments that were designed to be fragmented in order that white areas have their own local government, black areas have their own local government. A lot of the protests in the 80s and early 90s were all about the perceived illegitimacy of black local authorities in the townships, which were very, they were quite horrible in terms of providing public goods to residents. And so that question of unifying the city was resolved in a very compromised manner. One thing that I track is that neighborhood associations and developers took advantage of this institution of sub-municipalities, which were kind of the front line for a number of services, including collecting tax and rates payments. And what these early, what were and are still called city improvement districts negotiated with the sub-municipal structures is that rates payments could be ring-fenced only to be spent in the sub-municipal area. So, some of the kind of wealthiest, relatively inner core suburbs in the north of Johannesburg, like Ilovo, Melrose, Rosebank, these are some of the areas where this started, Sandton. So you kind of get a sense that these are some of the traditional wealthy areas of the city. And these are some of the areas that have been kind of the biggest beneficiaries of the post-apartheid development trajectory of the city, both in terms of private investment and public investment. And that was kind of kicked off by this intent to ring fence rates contributions so that they could not effectively cross-subsidize investments by the city, the central city government in other parts of the city. Now, the sub-municipal arrangement was a temporary arrangement. It ended in about 2000 when there was a much more deeper unification of the administrative apparatus of the city into what's now referred to as a metropolitan municipality. But what happened in those early years is that the city was putting a lot of money into capital investments in the poorest townships in the city. But the problem, as we know, with infrastructure investment, it's not just the capital investment, it's operating investment, the operating costs. And for that, you need a much more sustainable financial arrangement at the central city in order to manage those kinds of things effectively. And this paper doesn't even get into some of the more high profile issues in fiscal management of the city of Joburg, most notably in terms of electricity billing. So that's ring fencing. The second strategy